Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meat Mafia podcast. On today's episode, the Meat Mafia is joined by Carlisle Studer. Carlisle is a former actress turned holistic health practitioner, and she dove deep into the world of health when she realized how she looked on the outside did not reflect how she was actually feeling. Carlisle has since developed an intuitive approach to eating and has relied on a whole, real foods diet to restore certain areas of her health. In our discussion with Carlisle, we touch on certain topics around intuitive eating, women's health, health hacks, and the importance of self-experimentation when it comes to developing a healthy intuition. Enjoy. Before we get rolling here, we want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Pharaoh Skincare. They are offering 20% off for members of the Meat Mafia, so go check out their website in the link below and use promo code MAFIA at checkout to get yourself a discount on your first purchase. The products they make are 100% natural and animal-based, using pig lard and tallow as the main ingredients, and using no filler chemicals like your typical cosmetic companies. If you haven't used an animal-based skincare product yet, we highly recommend trying them for their rich vitamins and minerals without all the extra chemicals your skin doesn't need. Go give Pharaoh a try and let us know what you think. All right, we're rolling, and we're here with Carlisle Studer, who we have actually had the pleasure of joining her on her podcast. So we're running it back on the Meat Mafia podcast, and super excited to have her. Carlisle, what's going on?
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I was so excited to come on the show, and it's really cool to see. I've been interested in healthy eating for a very long time, but it's so cool to see guys like you, because now my mom's super interested in it, and all of her friends who are older and are really excited and getting into it. So thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Yeah. Has your mom, are we going to convince your mom to maybe go down the raw liver train?
She's a big liver pate person. So she can eat it. I have to take it raw and frozen like a pill because I do not like the taste, but she will just cook some up with some onions and then eat it. But I'm sure that if, we coaxed her a little bit, we could get her eating some raw liver.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on the cube it up and freeze it and pill it because
absolutely
it's just way easier.
I've been really into sorry.
No, go. You're good.
No, I was gonna say I've been really into cod liver oil lately. Ooh. It's done really good. It's done amazing things for my skin within 2 weeks. So
yeah,
it tastes disgusting.
It has a lot of vitamin A in it, right? It's really rich in retinol. So yeah. I've actually been supplementing with it recently too, and I don't know if I've noticed any insane effects or anything like that, but I have been doing research on it as a key supplement for mineral balancing. It plays retinol plays a really important role in transporting magnesium and copper in the body. So yeah, I've been doing a similar supplementation.
Love that.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to just experiment and figure out what works best for you. And just so the audience knows, we were referring to your mom, Carmen Studer. We had her on. We've been on 2 episodes of her podcast, and then she came on episode number 21 of ours. And in that conversation, she had mentioned that, you're very involved in the esoteric health space, and you've had your own journey kind of utilizing this intuitive approach to eating to heal a lot of the ailments that you'd had. So I think to start, I think we'd love to just hear a little bit more about your journey and just story with nutrition. That'd be great.
Okay, awesome. So I grew up as a child actor, which is a very funny thing, but I started acting when I was 5 or 6 years old, and it's my entire childhood, and it's all I remember. And I think when you are constantly on camera and getting pictures taken of you and fitting into clothes for commercials and stuff, you're hyper aware of your body. And I was never a fat kid at all, but I was just slightly bigger, I think, than all my friends. And I'm very, very short, but I just had a tiny bit extra. And I think I was so self-conscious of it nearly my entire life. And what got me into healthy eating was extremely unhealthy dieting habits. So when I was 17, I was oh my gosh, I'm gonna start counting calories. And I have an obsessive personality, which luckily I've channeled into good things and not drugs and alcohol. But I became obsessive about counting calories, and I would count every single thing. If there was ketchup on something, I would get my little app out and add it up. And I was restricting to a very, very low, dangerous amount. And I think when you have things like that, it makes you feel good because you're totally in control of it. But because I was so restricted with my eating, trying to get under 1,000 calories a day and under 25 grams of carbs, which is like insane for someone who's so young. Then it created like an extreme imbalance, because then if I would go slightly over like my calories for the day, I would just binge and eat like whatever I wanted. And then the next day I would have like one green drink and not eat anything else. And so it created this like really, really sick cycle of just constantly eating too much or not eating enough. And I was eating like terrible things, like those like Atkins shakes that have like wood chips in them, basically, like all of the like literally like horrible things. And so after that, I started reading about green tea because I was like obsessed with the idea that it could help you lose weight. And then from that, I learned about matcha, and I started reading about like ceremonial grade matcha and how monks would drink it for 8 hours to help them meditate. And it was from this like health website. And I got very interested in health through like essential oils and tea. I just thought like the healing aspects of herbs and like these little things that you could just put in your purse or carry with you, and they could do these magical things, was so like inviting to me. And so I started just like obsessively reading. I got really into Dr. Mercola, and I started reading all of the articles on his website. And at that time in the health space, I think a lot of it was very skewed towards kale and spinach and almond milk. And so I think I was greatly misdirected at what I should have been doing to support a body, especially one that had been malnourished for a long time of not eating enough calories. And so I became very obsessive with, eating, like avoiding red meat and only eating wild caught salmon. And like, I put kale in like literally everything. And then I paid for it later on because I developed like extreme fatigue. And then within that realm, I started obsessively doing cardio, which cardio is great. I was doing Soul Cycle, which is like a thing that people make fun of all the time. I became like super obsessed with it. And I had a friend who's an instructor, so I could go for free anytime I wanted. And I would do like sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. And because of that, I completely burned out my adrenals to the point where I could have like a large iced coffee on an empty stomach and I wouldn't feel like the slightest change in anything. Like my adrenals were completely shot at the age of 20, which was awful. And I felt like I was like kind of hit a breaking point. And so within all of this, I think the reason I became so obsessed with cardio and these things, because I was still obsessed with the idea of staying skinny and like losing weight. And so I was just plagued by the idea of thinking about food all the time. And I wanted to be free from that. I think I got to a point where I didn't even care what happened. I just didn't want to think about it every single second of every single day. And I read a book called Intuitive Eating, and it teaches you really how to work with your body to find out what you need, and how every single diet that we put ourselves on creates like these like weird rules in our head. And if we don't abide by them, we need to like self-punish. And really it led me to food freedom. And it's a very like counterintuitive thing, because the first thing you're supposed to do with intuitive eating is let yourself eat whatever you want, which is really hard, especially for people who have, disordered eating. It's associated with control, and it's like unhealthy things that you crave. But through that, it took me, I would say like probably 3 or 4 years to really master it. And then once I did, and it was like a battle, I think I just never gave up. Like I would have a week where I felt really good and I was eating really healthy because I was listening to all the cravings my body needed, whether it was, milk or steak, even though that was like my no food. And then I would have a month where I would fall back into my old habits, but I just didn't give up on myself. And I think that was like really important. And I listened to like all like the stupid videos of like the people telling you they can give you like food freedom, and none of these things worked for me. And the intuitive eating was the only one that shaped a way for me to really listen to my body. And now I got to a point where I crave only what is really good for me. And it kind of led into intuitive supplementing, I call it. Like I can just wake up in a day and be like, I'm craving B vitamins, or I'm craving vitamin K, which doesn't necessarily have a specific taste, but I feel like I've become so in tune through that I can just know exactly what I need to supplement with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it about the intuitive eating? Because I think it's a really interesting approach. And like you mentioned being greatly misguided by some information, but like I think if you're listening to your body will tell you exactly what you need. What is it about the intuitive approach that worked for you, that has lasted for you? Because I feel like most people get on and off these diets, and it's like, every 2 to 3 months are on to the next diet. So what made it so that you could continue going down, this path of intuitive eating?
I think it was, and the way, there's a book, it's called Intuitive Eating. And the way that she lays it out is she like says there's all different types of diet girls. And then there's like the girl who binges and says, tomorrow I'm going to eat good. And then there's the girl who says, oh, I'm going to start Monday. And it's like, it's honestly, it's just programming. So you have to deprogram your brain, because everyone's been guilty of that. If you like are eating bad on a vacation, you're like, oh, I'm going to start eating good Monday. And so then you set up these like little cycles. And so I think that, this is going to sound weird, but I think I finally just like gave up. And I think that resistance, and when you're like my mom always says, whatever you resist persists, which is like a really good advice. And I think that I was so resistant to all of these things, and I didn't truly believe them. I understood them on a surface level, but I didn't really like accept them. And it wasn't until I fully sat with myself and deprogrammed myself and really like wrote out my feelings, how I was feeling when I was going through these things, that I was able to stick with it. And it was such a gradual trend. And I think that's like why diets are so attractive, because they're like a fast fix. But this is like something that's going to help you for the rest of your life. And I think that it wasn't even until I looked around one day and I realized that I hadn't thought about obsessively what I was going to have for every meal in like a few months. And I was like, oh my God, it's finally working. Because I honestly kind of gave it up on it. I'm like, well, I guess it works for some people, but not for me. And so I think that once you're not so hard on yourself, and once you just kind of deprogram those beliefs, and you have to get to the core of where those beliefs come from, because a lot of people associate trauma with food, and a lot of parents soothe their kids' emotional needs with food. And so I think that you really have to like go in and see why food is such a trigger point for you to really be able for these like practices to take place.
Yeah, the concept of the extremism that you mentioned is really interesting too, because I think both of us Clemenza and I have also fallen victim to that, where it's like, that's what's kind of attractive about this concept of like a carnivore diet or like a keto diet, is that it's very restrictive. So it's very easy to play in between these lines, but it's easy to get very dogmatic about it, or have like guilt or shame associated with going off the diet, or like maybe you have some honey or fruit and people are like on each other's backs about it. Like that's not healthy either, right? And if you're at a point where you're like, I'm having some ground beef and I'm tracking like having 3 grams of sugar in ketchup, it's like, that's almost like OCD, and you're taking away from this experience. So I think it's interesting how it's almost like you push the envelope in one sense, realized like, yes, you started cooking and working out and losing a lot of the weight, but that wasn't ultimately the sustainable thing. It's almost like you changed your mindset through this intuitive approach. And that's why you're as successful as you are now. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is why I've been so successful I've been able to figure out what was wrong with me. I haven't been to like a real doctor since I was like 15. Like the last doctor I saw was like an acupuncturist. I just have a fear of needles and of doctors a little bit. So I think that I like a challenge, and I like figuring everything out. And so because I've been so intuitive with what I was eating for the past years, I've been able to look back and pinpoint like, oh, I had gut dysbiosis, or I had like metabolic dysfunction, and this is the way that it's manifesting in my diet. But yeah, I would say that's definitely true. And if you're stressing about every single thing that you're eating, the food is not going to be as nourishing as you want it to be. Like I'm not advocating for eating bad things, but if you're going to like go out and celebrate someone's birthday and have some seed oils, like if you're going to be stressed about it the whole time, it's going to do worse for your body than if you just like pray over it and actually like enjoy it. I think the obsessiveness raises our cortisol levels, and that's terrible for our body as well.
You mentioned your background as an actress. I think it's an interesting one because there's so much pressure on like the appearance side of things. How did you overcome that psychologically? Like, I'm sure there was a lot of things like you had to work through, just like comparing yourself with other people constantly. Like, that's not really like a healthy environment to put yourself in. I feel like most people probably struggle with that. If you're trying to become an actor, you're constantly comparing yourself to other people.
Absolutely. And I think that if you're really insecure about something, that thing you're insecure about becomes like the problem of everything. And so I think even though I was like very little overweight, like maybe like 5 to 7 pounds, I really had convinced myself in my mind that's why I didn't have a good agent, and that's why I wasn't booking anything. And so it became like the root of all of my problems. And I think that manifested beyond just my body. I think I probably carried it with me in my aura too. I think that I was so afraid that I was gonna like maybe book something and they were gonna tell me I had to lose weight or something. But I did fit modeling for a little bit, which isn't like fitness modeling. It's you try on jeans for the companies that are making them to make sure they fit an actual real person. And I'm like barely 5'3", so I did the petite side. and you make really good money from that, but you can't even gain 2 pounds. Cause if you're like a fourth of an inch off, like in your waist or your hips, then you get fired. And so that was like so stressful for me. And my agent was like 400 pounds, and she was like, all you need to do is like lose 5 pounds and stop eating carbs. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm getting lectured about this from you. Like,
That's insane. Yeah, we talk a lot about the concept of like fit but unhealthy, and that's definitely what that whole industry seems to fall into.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. They're all like smoking cigarettes and like doing coke, but like drinking green juice the next day, and it's all fine.
Yeah, the green juice cancels out the cocaine for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Carlisle, what is, and I don't know if you have this with the intuitive approach, but what would you say like a typical day of eating looks like for you, or what foods do you really gravitate towards?
Ooh, and so I'm such like a mood eater, and I love preparing food. I love cooking for people that I love. Like, it's really like therapeutic for me. So in the morning, the very first thing I do, I also love routine, obviously. I take my cod liver oil, which I have to drink with orange juice because it tastes absolutely repulsive to me. And then I usually go on a walk, and I usually have like eggs and beef bacon and like some type of fruit or some type of carb, I would say. Like, I have this really good gluten-free sourdough I like to make. I bought some sourdough biscuits from the farmer's market that were like to die for. So I would always say like the things I crave the most in the morning are beef bacon, eggs, and then I'll make like gluten-free pancakes, or just like fruit with like honey and bee pollen. I would say that's like my go-to, and then coffee, but only after I eat.
I love it.
So it sounds like you mentioned a few things, like the orange juice, the cod liver oil, the bee pollen. Or is that all intentional? Like, or where did you pick up those sort of eating habits? Because those are, I feel like, pretty specific.
Yeah. I started taking cod liver oil because I had seen so many people talk about how it helped with I'm in the process of like fixing my metabolic function right now, and I still struggle with like cold hands and cold feet from all the damage I did to my body. And so I saw people saying how it was helpful with that. And so I just wanted to see what would happen if I started to take it. So it's only been like about a month, but like those tiny little red freckles you can get on your skin.
Yeah.
I have those, and they're very small, and they're not like raised or anything, but those have like literally started to like disappear ever since I started taking it. So I think my body, and I think that comes back to the intuitive eating, is when I saw people talking about cod liver oil, I was like, oh my God, I just like got a hit that like I felt like I needed that. And then the bee pollen, I just like the taste of it. Like, I would even eat it just by itself. It kind of tastes like chalky and weird, but I like it. So I usually, like last summer, like my morning shake would be like orange juice, 2 egg yolks, bee pollen, raw honey, and like a little bit of goat kefir. And that was like my go-to forever. And so I think I'm still using those foods therapeutically.
Very cool. Yeah.
Sounds like musical.
Yeah. So good. The reason I asked is because I was reading this book by Morley Robbins called The Root Cause Protocol. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. He has some amazing advice in there, and it just like he brought up a bunch of the foods that you mentioned. So I think we're going to try to have him on soon, but he talks about
that'd be so cool.
Fatigue is like one of these things that like 20 to 30% of doctors' visits start with a conversation around people saying that they're fatigued. Usually like that's just something to do with metabolic dysfunction or oxidative stress causing all these different issues with fatigue. So he kind of breaks it down and comes up with this root cause protocol. So I love all these little like pockets of the esoteric health that people go down. And I know one of yours is specifically around, is it Jello or is it?
Yeah, gelatin and Jello's gummies, anything with beef gelatin.
I've seen you posting about them recently, and they look incredible. What got you started with that?
So a woman I work part-time for is a holistic health practitioner, and she does something called biofeedback. And it's a very complicated quantum thing I can barely understand, but you kind of like hook these things up to your bodies, and it gives you a scan, and it reads your energy, and it can kind of tell you like what you're deficient in, and it can tell you which organs are struggling. And it's very, very interesting. And something that kept coming up was amino acids. And so I just looked into what is really good in amino acids, and like gelatin was one of the things that came up, because the amino acid profile of like bovine gelatin is like very, very high. It has glycine and tons of like really good things. And so first I just made Jello, which by the way is like the easiest thing in the world to make. All you need is like a good grass-fed bovine gelatin, and then your fruit juice of choice. And I think I just started with like cranberry pomegranate, and I made Jello. And then I'd seen people who'd make like gelatin squares. And if you just add more of the gelatin, it becomes more dense. And so then I went on and I made like mango cream ones, and then I made like cold brew and shilajit ones. And I'm just like obsessed with turning nearly anything I can into Jello form. And it's very good, especially if you're eating a really meat heavy diet, because the amino acids help balance out what you're eating. And if you're eating like a lot of beef, it's really good to have. You can make marshmallows with it too, like a marshmallow or a gummy or a little bit of Jello with it to kind of balance out the amino acid profile. So it's really good for your liver as well.
That's that cold brew shilajit recipe looked unbelievable. I saw that like a couple of weeks ago, and I still think about making those.
They're delicious and they're strong. Like I had a few and I was like, oh my gosh, this works.
I love people who aren't afraid to experiment a bit in the kitchen. I feel like it's such an important trait of like figuring out your own intuitive way of doing things. Like you have to be able to experiment in the kitchen.
Absolutely. And I've made some that are nasty. Like I made this really beautiful like gelatin cake, and it was just with coconut water because I wanted it to be hydrating, but I added blue spirulina because I wanted it to be pretty, but that stuff tastes nasty and it smelled so bad. My mom made me like throw it outside. So I've had a lot of experiments that didn't go well, but it's one of those things that's really good for your gut. And you can also make herbal gelatins. So if you make like a herbal tea, you can turn it into a gelatin form, and it's really good for kids. Like if you want your kids to be getting more herbs, it's like a really like fun and cute way to get kids to eat some more superfoods as well.
That's great. Yeah. Something we wanted to ask you, we've definitely noticed a huge uptick in these esoteric health accounts, and people like Carnivore Realists, I've noticed that they've changed their tune to be speaking more to women and talking about like a lot of the hormone imbalances that women have because of like the overprevalence of birth control. Like, women are getting on it when they're girls, frankly, like 10, 12 years old. Is that something you spent a lot of time researching or subscribe to? Would just be curious, like your thoughts on that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I've recently read like 3 or 4 books just on that. I was reading one today that was really fascinating. It was talking about your brain on birth control and how it alters your brain chemistry. And I think that there is like some kind of awakening that's happening, because I've never been on birth control, because like I said, my distrust of doctors runs deep and I never want to take anything. And so I've always just been like, if I struggle with something, I'll figure it out myself. And, but all of my friends, I mean, every single one of them, except for like one right now who just recently got off of it, was on it. And I think that I've always been very hesitant, because I've heard a long time ago that it can prevent you from choosing like the correct partner, because what happens is when you're on the pill, you're not ovulating, so you're not fertile. So it's technically, like, this sounds very harsh, but it's like a temporary castration. And I think that women are always like, how come men aren't on birth control? I'm like, because men wouldn't put up with that. Like if you told them they were going to take something that would shut off their testosterone, they would be like, absolutely not. Like, and I think that they've definitely been taken advantage of. And we see that like, it's going to be very hard on your liver. It's going to deplete you of like really essential vitamins and minerals that you need to be happy. And it's shutting off that communication from your fertility to your brain. And when that happens, you're kind of completely different person, because our hormones are really, really everything and the basis of so many things. And so I always joke around. That's why I think like so many girls are attracted to like skinny guys with nail polish now, is not because things have changed, but because they're all on birth control.
100%.
I mean, I don't know nearly enough about female health, but it seems like one of those things that there's no way it doesn't have long-term effects on your body. Particularly just like dumping hormones into your body every day. And I feel like most doctors like don't really give you much of a warning about it. Like, I'm curious, like what is that conversation typically like?
Yeah, I asked my friend, and most of my friends, when they got on it, they were like about 15, and that's so young. So their parents have to give permission. And most of them, it's not even through like their OBGYN, it's through like a dermatologist or like just their general practitioner. And they say, well, I'm having really bad breakouts, or I'm having really difficult periods. And they just write them a script nearly immediately. and never say anything about the long-term effects. And when you take it that young, before your body's finished developing, it can affect the way your body develops, like how your breasts are going to develop. It can affect your brain development. It can affect your bone development, increased risk for osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, breast cancer, blood clot, stroke. I mean, there's, like over 100 women, I believe, every year just in the US who die from these things. It's like a very, very serious thing. And they're kind of giving out like candy.
Yeah, I know women that they've been on birth control for years, and they're like, they've said, oh, I haven't had a period in like 2+ years. And I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's scary. Yeah. And that's what I think, that like, we talk about how there's like an obvious attack on masculinity, and there is also an attack on like fertility as well. And this is where women are totally raised to absolutely fear their periods and to fear their fertility. Like, it's like childbearing has become like this like burden. And I feel like the way that it's viewed is really making young women scared to grow up and be women as well. Mm-hmm. Which is like very, very sad. Like, I think that even the book I was reading today, it's called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control. And she goes into the biological reasons, what happens in your brain when you shut down this fertility. And it's really funny because in the foreword of her book, she was on birth control for 10 years. And when she stopped taking it, she said that colors looked more vibrant, that she did things she loved again, like cooking and working out, and that she felt like she had awoken from a sleep she'd been in for 10 years. And then she went on to say that she didn't regret it because without birth control, she didn't have to worry about unwanted pregnancy. And so she was able to get through college. And I think that this is programming that runs really deep, is that women know so little about their cycles. They're just told that you're just going to get pregnant if you don't take birth control. Like, there's other ways around it. And so to kind of see that was like really disheartening for me, because I don't know how you could write a whole book on what it does to your brain and say, oh, but I couldn't have gotten through college without it. Like, maybe you could have, and maybe you could have done better and still not gotten pregnant. Like, it's not that hard not to get pregnant.
Yeah. I feel like there's like 1% of people that even realize that there are literally all these apps on your phone that will track your cycle and tell you how fertile you are. And like, you can get very scientific with it. People just think, oh, I need to be on this pill or use this contraceptive. They don't even understand their own body at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did, this is like so weird. They did a study on women in strip clubs, and they went to see which of ones were on the pill and which ones weren't. And they tracked them for a few months, and they tracked their cycles to see how many tips they were getting. And the women who were not on the pill, who were actually ovulating and fertile, had like double the amount of tips, specifically in the window that they were fertile. And the people didn't know, like the men coming there and tipping them, didn't know that there was like a study going on, but they were just showing how men are naturally more attracted to women when they are fertile. And especially when they're in those few days where they can get pregnant. It's like, they know it, like it's just your scent, everything about you kind of gives off that marker. And so it's very important. And also, one thing, be careful about certain apps, because I know a lot of them really are very bad about stealing data. The one that I use that has some of the best data requirements is called Read Your Body. So I highly recommend that one.
Read Your Body.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other health hacks like that you subscribe to that have helped you along the way? Maybe even more so specifically like women's health hacks that like might relate to your audience a bit more?
Oh my gosh. I think that learning like to work with you have to, I mean, this should be taught in schools, but how a woman's hormonal cycle works from day one to the end of it, which could be anywhere from 21 to 35 days, you need to understand it, because like when you're in your estrogen dominant phase, your follicular phase, you can build muscle faster and you're more creative and you're more social. So if you want to like kind of plan your life around, this is when I'm going to do this, and this is when I'm going to go lift weights because my body's going to be more primed to actually build muscle. And then when you're in your luteal phase and you're progesterone dominant, you are going to be more tired and you're going to be more hungry and you're going to need more protein. So you're going to need to, take it a little easier and maybe do, lighter impact workouts. And I think one of the biggest things that most women, I mean, I'm sure you guys talk about this on the podcast all the time, do not eat enough protein. And I have a really small appetite. I have to eat every couple of hours. And although I totally subscribe to intuitive eating, the one thing that even if I'm not in the mood, I'll force myself to eat is protein, because if I do not get enough of it, I get very tired very quickly. So I do that. And then castor oil packs, if you do it like over your uterus and over your liver, because, you know, hormones are synthesized in our liver. And that is something that needs like absolutely the most support. And it's funny that you're talking about Morley Robbins, because he talks a lot about like copper. And what's crazy is when a woman's pregnant, she offloads like 10% of her mineral reserves to build her baby, which is why a lot of pregnant women are very tired, very thirsty, crave pickles because they need sodium. Their body's looking to replace those minerals. And the way that they build their baby's liver is through their copper. So like our modern diet, it depletes copper because we know like iron can dysregulate it, and we have iron shavings in a lot of our food that's been fortified. And so copper heavy foods have really helped. Castor oil packs over your uterus and over your liver, especially in like the week before, 2 weeks before your period, to like stimulate that. Other liver really dominant like herbs like milk thistle, red raspberry leaf, stinging bark, like those things are really good as well. But I think that diet and then sunlight have been, which is like, I feel like everything always comes back to like diet and sunlight. So it seems stupid to say, but you know, vitamin D is a hormone. And so if you really want to make if you're having really bad PMS, it's a sign that something is wrong. It's not supposed to be so debilitating that you're really depressed or that you're in a lot of pain. And so you have to fix your diet and you have to fix your sunlight habits, and then drinking a lot of warm teas, especially leading up to your period, because you want to stimulate that blood flow and you want to get your womb really warm. That's why women have like that teeny layer of fat, like right over their uterus. Like you're not supposed to have like a gut, like it's still like would look good at a crop top, but that little teeny bit layer of fat, that's keeping your uterus warm. And you want that because you're, you know, an incubator. So I definitely think that diet and sunlight and getting morning sunlight really helps me a lot. And then just herbal tinctures that are good for progesterone support. And I've taken progesterone, like the wild yam creams as well, but I like taking the wild yam tinctures better. That's just for me personally. And then castor oil, and then limiting, oh my gosh, I'm talking so much. And then limiting like endocrine disruptors, like, you know, like all of your makeup and your perfumes and your body washes and all of those things have so many things that are really, really hard on your hormones. So, you know, reassessing how you can support your liver first and foremost, and remove the things from your life that disrupt your hormones and are really harsh on your liver are some really good places to start.
The endocrine disrupting makeup is really interesting, because Clemens and I were just talking about that, how I think all three of us are around the same age, and there's so many women in their 20s where it's like they're just hiding the natural beauty of their face. Like they're beautiful girls and they think that they need to wear all this makeup and just cake it on and clog their pores and all this stuff. It's so crazy when it's like a man wants a woman that's like naturally beautiful. Like we want to see your actual skin. We don't want you to hide that. We want to actually see who the real person is. So I guess to that point, are there any like just natural or non-endocrine disrupting makeups or products that you like that you would recommend to women listening to the podcast?
I really like, there's a brand called Ilia, and it's ILIA. They're like one of the cleanest you're going to find. So I think I use like their like chapstick and their eyeliner. And then Milk has some products, I think it's just called Milk. Some of their products are clean, some of them aren't. You kind of want to double check it. But I use some of their cleaner products as well. And those are the two. And like, I think that these kinds of things can be so overwhelming. And so my rule when I started learning about it was just replace it as it runs out. You don't need to go out and buy everything new and stress yourself out. So just as you run out, look for a better option.
Perfect.
I think that there's a lot of people out there who hear people say like the cosmetics that you're using are causing a lot of harm to your body, and they just don't necessarily believe it. But when you dig into it, it's like these are the things we're putting on our skin, which is our largest organ, every single day. Like I feel like there aren't even enough like men's products out there, like deodorant and things like that are just like readily available and not loaded with all these things that are endocrine disruptors. So like having these brands to go to, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, everything's like horrible. And then there's like those like brands that are like kind of clean and they like market as all natural, but then when you like read the labels, it's just like not.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I wish there were good men's deodorants products that are natural. I've worn Tom's. I literally smell like an onion when I wear Tom's.
Terrible. Yeah.
It's so bad. But at the same time, I don't want to be absorbing the aluminum in Old Spice. So if there's anyone out there that's listening to this that has good natural deodorant products, or maybe like flavored with like peppermint or like something natural, we would both love to that. So just food for thought.
Yeah.
Carlisle, one of the things you were talking about before we hit the record button is that you've gotten very into the holistic dental care space and how that's been big for you. We would love to learn more about that and have you talk on that, because I've done some of the the coconut oil pulling. I've gotten tongue scrapers. I've noticed a big difference from that. So yeah, I would love for you to expand on some of that stuff.
Oh my gosh, I'm such a nerd about this. I'm like obsessed with teeth. And so I stopped drinking soda when I was like 17. I'm like 25 now. So it's been like a long time. And I didn't go to the dentist for a few years because I was living in Los Angeles and I didn't want to find a new dentist. I go to a great one here in Texas that's a holistic biological dentist, and they do like oxygenated ozone therapy. They don't use fluoride. They don't use BPAs. They don't do root canals, and they won't even remove a wisdom teeth unless it's, actually imperative to your health. So I wanted to wait until I moved back, and I went to them and I waited a little too long. And I was absolutely shocked because I had a bunch of cavities, and they were like, oh, well, do you drink a lot of sugary drinks? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I eat very healthy and I floss. I thought I was doing all the things right. And the more I learned about it, the more I learned that there's so many more root causes of cavities that we don't know about. And there's like little tips and tricks you can do to avoid them. But it's so crazy because everything seems to come back to minerals. And so when you're stressed, people always say, oh, well, stress causes gray hair. And why is that? Because when you're stressed, you're running your adrenals and your thyroid, and you're depleting your minerals like copper and all these other things that are going to give your hair color. But the same thing happens when you are sleep deprived and when you're stressed. And I had burned my adrenals out so bad that my body, and I was not mineralizing my water at this time. I didn't know. I was, drinking tons of water that had no minerals in it. And I thought I was doing okay because it didn't have fluoride. And my body needed minerals so bad, it had began leaching them from my teeth, which is like so crazy. And not everyone will leach them from their teeth. So like you can still be stressing your adrenals out, but you could be leaching them from your hip bones, or like the esoteric belief is that wherever you hold stress, and wherever you hold like emotions is where your body's going to leach those minerals from. So like the spiritual belief behind cavities is that a lot of people that, have trouble like speaking up or sharing things or telling the truth, or those kinds of things that hold a lot of stress in their mouths, might leach the minerals from there. And so I really wanted to understand why I had these cavities. And so once I got to that, it's not just drinking sugar or eating sugar. It's kind of a bunch of different things, whether it comes to your adrenals and it comes to like vitamin D, like you need vitamin D for your teeth to be strong. And so my tooth routine now is like, my skincare routine is very simple. I use like two things, but my tooth routine is like very extensive. So one other thing that most people don't know is you're not supposed to floss after you brush. You're supposed to floss before you brush, because if you're flossing after you brush, like brushing is for polishing your teeth essentially. And you really are flossing to get the little food particles out from the inside of your teeth, because you can also get cavities in between your teeth. So I floss my teeth and then I irrigate I have a water pick. And then sometimes I'll put little drops of hydroxygen, which is like molecular oxygen, in my water pick to keep the microbiome of my mouth in check. And then I brush my teeth, and I have a really great toothpaste that I use. It's a really like a liquid. And then I tongue scrape. And so my teeth have been better than they absolutely ever have been. And one thing that you can do to really help if you're struggling with cavities is after you eat, just wash your mouth out with water or use a water pick, because after you eat, your body's releasing acid to help break down that food. And so you kind of want to get that off your teeth as quick as you can. And another thing is our gut has a microbiome, but our mouth also has a microbiome, and it shares an axis with its lungs. And so this really great herbalist, her name, I don't know her full name, but I follow her on Instagram. Her name's Organic Olivia. And she was showing all of the reasons why people who got COVID developed secondary bacterial pneumonia infections. And she was able to link it back to a certain bacteria they had in their mouth. And so we really have to take care of the microbiome of our mouth, because it also relates to how well our immune system is functioning. And cleaning your teeth is very important, because later on in life, it contributes to Alzheimer's and heart problems. Like not cleaning your teeth can contribute to heart problems as well. But you want to find really good floss that doesn't have fluoride or plastic in it. My favorite is Dr. Tongue's Smart Floss. It's like the best. And then you want to use a water pick if you can. And then toothpaste. I have tried everything from like Crest white toothpaste to like homemade coconut oil toothpaste. And so I've struggled with them all. And there's a lot of them. It depends. Everyone's different, and you have to really find out what works for your teeth. So after you implement like a new product, to really pay attention to see how your gums and your teeth feel. But a lot of products have glycerin in it. Even like the completely organic, holistic ones that are mineralizing for your teeth have glycerin, and glycerin can have like a plaque-like effect on your teeth and stay and linger. Some people say glycerin is water soluble, but I've noticed that when I switched over to a non-glycerin toothpaste, my teeth whitened immediately. And so that was like a huge moment for me. And then another thing is baking soda. Baking soda is very good at whitening your teeth, and it's good for your teeth, but it's really, really harsh on your gums. And especially if you're someone who brushes hard and you're using something like baking soda, you could be eroding your gums a little bit. And so you kind of want to be careful about that as well. So I found one that has like minerals in it, and it has some essential oils for your microbiome. And then it has like flower essences as well, and a bunch of good things. And it makes my teeth like, it's called Rupam Herbals. It's dental soap. And it's like the best toothpaste I've ever tried. But it's the only thing that's really kind of helped remineralize my teeth, along with if you're struggling with cavities, I recommend taking vitamin K. And the only brand that I trust for this one is the MitoLife one, because I've tried different ones. And the MitoLife vitamin K is like K1 and K2. I could feel the sensitivities in my tooth go away within a week and a half of taking it. And that's never happened before. So there's some things we can get from diet, but like our food is so deficient in the things that we need now that you really need to supplement with some things, especially if you're having an issue with cavities. And if you have a cavity and it's not super bad, I highly recommend, there's a book, I think it's called like Curing Tooth Decay. Really try and work on it with your diet and ozone therapy and vitamin K, and see if you can remineralize it before you fill it, because teeth can grow back, and our teeth are actually alive. They have they're like little tubes, and they have lymph in them. And so anytime you're doing like a root canal or you're drilling into it, it's going to be very stressful on your body. And the reason root canals can be dangerous as well is because our teeth have a meridian. So like our front teeth can respond to like our kidneys, and our back ones to like our spleen or like our liver. So each tooth can respond to like an organ. And when you get a root canal, that's a dead tooth, and a lot of times an abscess will grow right above that. And so if you're having like a recurring issue with your gut and you don't know anything that it is, it might be a good idea to check to see if you've had a root canal on the tooth that corresponds to that organ as well. So, and I think that it's so hard to find a good dentist. So really, really make sure you find a good dentist that cares and wants to work with you. And then the last thing I really advocate for is using ozonated, oxygenated oil on your gums. So I have 2 different types of ozone oil. And so I'll either put it on my floss and floss with it to get the oxygen deep down into the pockets of my mouth to get rid of that underlying bacteria. Or after I do my tooth routine, I'll just massage it onto my gums to keep them nice and healthy.
All right. So you mentioned a lot there, but the one thing I'm most interested in, because you both said it, is the tongue scraper. What's the benefit?
Okay. So when you wake up, so as you sleep, you go to sleep at night, and your body detoxes, and a lot of those toxins make their way to the top of your tongue. So like that's like why we have like morning breath. It's a lot of bacteria and toxins that have accumulated there. And so if you can find a tongue scraper, you want to do that even before you drink water, because when you're drinking water, you're just swallowing all those toxins that have built on the top of your tongue. And a lot of people recommend a copper one because they're naturally like antibacterial. And so that's what I do. Like at night, I'll tongue scrape after my whole routine, but in the morning, that's the first thing I do is tongue scrape.
Very cool.
I love the approach too, because I think it's so easy to just focus on diet. And I think we're probably guilty of this sometimes ourselves. And obviously it's such a core pillar to your metabolic health, but like taking it a step further and talking about your oral health and your gut health and your skin health and there's just so many other avenues that you can go down. So I feel like just from this conversation, I have like 3 pages of notes just talking about stuff. I just don't focus on it, and I should.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's like, it wasn't something I ever thought about until I started to get tooth sensitivity. And then I was like, all right, this is a problem. I got to fix it and figure out the root cause of it and where I went wrong. But it's, like the first phase of digestion happens in our mouth. So it's definitely very important.
Yeah.
What topics are you interested in most right now, Carlisle?
Right now, I would say fertility probably, and like women's health and hormones. Like you said, it's like become very popular. But I think like it's fascinating to see, like we know how we see people today and they're generally so unhealthy compared to our past. And so I'm trying to like figure out how I can have like the healthiest baby possible. And that's like way down in the future. I'm not married or anything, but, you know, I've already started like thinking of ways I can like prepare my body for that. And so that's what I've been obsessed with as well, as learning how to track my fertility and learning how to support it and create like the healthiest body I can have. So when I do have a baby, you know, I think a lot of people think that they can just take a month or so to prepare, but you really want to spend, you know, even like a couple of years if you can, detoxing your body, because if your baby's going to pull from your bones and your fat cells, you need to make sure there's not like heavy metals and parasites and all those types of things in there. So I think that right now, that's probably what I'm most obsessed with is fertility and fertility health and pregnancy and all those things. I think it's just really, really fascinating and cool.
It's interesting because I feel like Clemenza and I, we've started talking about this a lot, where it's like, obviously we don't have kids either. And we don't have families yet, but it's like, you almost start to make decisions realizing that like, hey, if you have a desire to have a wife and kids, that's going to be a massive part of your life. And even though you don't have a family now, it's like you start to make decisions with that future family in mind. So that sounds like very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I think people don't realize that everyone assumes, oh, when you're eating, when you're pregnant, your baby eats. And I'm like, no, but who you have been your whole life is who your baby is going to be. Like when you're in your, like, there's like a diagram that shows the grandmother. And so it's like your mom, when she was in her mom's womb, had the egg that was going to one day be you. And so like that goes back really, really far. And I think that it's like a good way to do something, not just for yourself, but it's like, oh, if I'm supporting my body, that's one day going to be a home for my baby. It becomes much, much more important.
Do you ever think about just how you want to like share more of this content, like whether it's like writing threads or a blog or YouTube videos or something like that?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. I need to figure it out because I have so many things in my head that I've got to get organized out in there. I'm not as good at writing it out because this is why I talk so fast, because I think so fast. So I think talking works better for me, but I'm always so hesitant to share these things because I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know everything there is to know about it. But I have to realize that, you know, everyone's coming from a different starting base point, and a lot of these things people don't really know. So I think I'd probably want to do more videos because it's easier for me to talk than it is to write, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just saying, I think in Clemenza, I know what you're thinking too. You definitely need to start posting your content because I think you know way more than you think you do, because we've both learned a ton from this conversation. And we went through the same thing in January. It's like you have that imposter syndrome of like, you know, who am I? I don't have like an MD or like I don't have a nutrition degree, but I think you would be surprised at how much your content can help other people. And it's like you settle on the best content that works for you. Like maybe like for us, threads have worked really well. The blog has worked well, but maybe it's just like recording 5-minute YouTube videos every single day on just different things. But I think that like our audience is going to gain a lot of value out of this. And I feel like other people would too. So just definitely something to keep in mind for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, no, I think that if I can save people a lot of the trouble that I went through, because I've had a lot of not like super bad health issues, but I've done a lot of things to get myself to where I am. And if I could help people streamline that or convince them not to take birth control and learn how to use, you know, natural fertility methods, then I would be all about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Carlisle, where's the best place for people to get in touch with you if they have questions or like if they wanted to listen to your podcast?
So my mom's YouTube channel, which is just Carmen Studer, we do our show there. We're going to be there tomorrow as well. And then on Twitter, my Twitter is Carlisle Diana, and my DMs are open. So like if you even like have a question you want to ask me, or for book recommendations on managing your hormones, fertility, like literally whatever, I'm very open and happy to help anyone.
Fantastic.
Well, this has been amazing. I mean, we both have personally learned a ton, and we would definitely love to have you on for part 2. And we'll link to everything in the show notes, but just to really appreciate the knowledge and the information, and obviously just like great to meet you as well.
Yeah, thank you. I had such a great time. It was great to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
And please, can you send us some of those gummies too?
Ooh, we need those.
I don't know how they have to be refrigerated, so I don't know how I'm gonna get them across somewhere. But I guess I've got to like, you know, put them on some dry ice or something. But I can try and figure it out.
I think Clemens and I will have to make a trip out to Dallas just for the cold brew ones.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carlisle. This is great.
Thank you guys so much.